Hey guys, we are on Wednesday where we're going to read an article about food. I enjoyed watching your recipes yesterday. They were pretty funny and really good, so I liked it, and I liked the initiative and the creativity, so good job. So I'm going to read this article out loud to you, and you can follow along on the screen while I read and kind of discuss, and then I'll put in some questions in a Google form for you to answer with this. So this is an article I found on Newsella, which I thought was pretty interesting, and it says, would you eat food made with trash? So it's a very controversial topic right now. So this is a boxes of strawberries that sit among the trash outside a grocery store in New York in December. Food waste is a problem in the world, and much of the food that gets thrown away is still safe to eat. So today, some of the companies are using these discarded foods as ingredients in an effort to reduce food waste. So they're basically saying, should we take food that should be, or some people are throwing away that still could be used in ingredients and things, and use them so they don't go to waste. Would you eat ketchup made from tossed out tomatoes, or eat a cereal bar made with leftover grain? If so, join the club. A growing number of companies are making food and drink products out of ingredients traditionally considered waste. And according to new research, consumers increasingly accept and even prefer such products. So right now, there's a lot of it's a big hype about like upcycling and not wasting things. And so people are jumping on this bandwagon more and more. Consumers are actually willing to pay more for food made from surplus products. And surplus products are those products that are thrown out that some people don't think are good still, and other people are like, oh, don't waste it. So surplus products are those thrown out products. Says Jonathan, who led the study. Jonathan is a professor of culinary arts at Drexel University. He and his colleagues presented study participants with different food products. They had one of three labels. They labeled it conventional, organic, or value-added surplus. The third was the study's term for foods normally destined for the dumpster. Participants were not, as food manufacturers have long assumed, disgusted by the idea of using trash in their food. Instead, they felt positively about it and the opportunity to help the environment. The study was recently published in the Journal of Consumer Behavior. Jonathan hopes it will help manufacturers feel more confident about incorporating food waste into their products. Rather than composting or donating scraps for pig feed or secretly carting it off to the landfill, manufacturers are going to own the fact that they're keeping this nutrition in the food system, says Jonathan. The program of food waste has been getting more attention in the recent years. Globally, up to a third of all food is spoiled or lost before it can be eaten. America wastes about 62 million tons of food annually. This waste amounts to $218 million. Yet 1 in 7 Americans are food insecure, meaning they don't have food at home, or they don't have food around them, so they are going hungry. This means they lack consistent access to healthy food. Waste can happen anywhere along the food chain. Farms fail to harvest crops due to lack of labor, food spoils during transport, manufacturers toss trimmings too small to use, and supermarkets reject produce for imperfect looks. Restaurants will throw out food after its use-by date. Consumers let meals rot in the back of their fridge. As consumers become increasingly aware of the problem, a number of companies are betting on surplus foods. Washington, D.C. based Misfit Juicery is one example. So this is a business in Washington, D.C. called Misfit Juicery. This company sells cold-pressed juices made from aesthetically flawed product and scraps of fruit and veggies that come from cutting baby carrots or watermelon squares. So basically they take scraps of fruit and veggies and use it in their products. Britain's Toast Ale brews beer for surplus bread. That includes unsold loaves from bakeries and scraps from companies that make ready-to-eat sandwiches. So with the bread, so in order for like breweries to make beers and stuff, they use yeast and bread type stuff. And so they basically take the thrown out bread from different places, different bakeries, and use it to make their product. Dutch company Barstenval makes heat and eat soups from surplus veggies. So some of these companies are meeting with major corporate success. In 2010, Jenny Costa was working at a London hedge fund where she read an article about dumpster divers. These are people who rummage through industrial trash bins outside of supermarkets or restaurants after hours looking for discarded but good food. It got her reading more about the food system. She learned about how difficult it is to match supply to demand. So, a lot of restaurants and businesses have to throw things out well before they're bad. So it's not saying stuff that's like molded or rotten or bad or spoiled. It's saying food that they want, because they want like fresh baked bread every day. So if these are bagels they made the day before and they didn't sell them, they're throwing all these out into the trash. When actually they're not bad, they're just not as fresh. So this says Cindy Rosen opens a garbage bag filled with bagels outside a bagel shop in New York City in December of 2007. Rosen belongs to a group that salvages thrown away food from trash outside of supermarkets, cafes, and restaurants. Okay, so it says, I thought this is just unsustainable, she says. We've got a planet that actually has the resources to feed everyone, yet so many go without. And that's true. We have a lot of food that gets wasted and thrown out, and that all around the world we have food problems where people don't have food and healthy food to eat. So Costa launched Ruby's in the Rebel. The company produces jams and chutneys from surplus fruits and vegetables. She sells banana ketchup, spiced pear chutney, piccalilli, an Indian-inspired British pickle relish, and more. All of her products are made from produce that would have otherwise been discarded for being under or overripe, funny-looking, or simply in overstock. Suppliers of Costa's products include the British supermarket chain Waitrose, the luxury food halls at Harrods and Fortnum and Mason. She also gets surplus produce from the Marriott Hotel Group and Virgin Trains. This year, the company went through about 200 tons of surplus fruits and veggies. Next year, Costa's estimates they'll use about 500 tons. People are starting to value food so much more, Costa says. Food is seen as a precious resource rather than a cheap commodity. Companies that want to use surplus foods in their products sometimes face technical or regulatory challenges. Dan began brewing beer as a hobby in college. He learned that the leftover spent grain from the brewing process made excellent bread. Plus, the brewing process stripped them of their sugars while leaving the fiber and protein. As a result, these grains were highly nutritious. But when he decided to try to use the grain on a commercial scale, it wasn't so easy. The stuff as it comes out of the brewery is really wet and it goes bad really quickly, he says. When it comes out first, it smells like oatmeal, but come back a day later and it's much worse. So basically, whenever they're doing their brewing process, whatever's left over, instead of just throwing it in the trash, they're finding ways to use it in grains and in breads and things so that they're using all these, not wasting any part of it. So he and his team, they had this problem of the grain being wet. So he and his team came up with technology to dry out the grain. This makes it suitable for commercial food production. Their company, Regrained, that's the name of it, now makes cereal bars in several flavors. It will come out with savory snacks soon. Eventually, Regrained hopes to partner with food companies who'll use their processing technology to add spent grain to their own foods. With millions of tons of spent grain produced by breweries each year, it's a huge potential market. As Regrained has attempted to rebrand spent grain as a sustainable superfood, they needed to add a bit of a PR spin, so they need to make it sound better. Spent grain is a terrible food name, he says. We're trying not to say things like waste on the package. The phrase we've coined is edible upcycling. So Jonathan cautions that transparency is the key when using surplus foods. So consumers like the idea of helping the environment. They don't like feeling like a company is hiding something. So before I read this next part, so basically they're saying as long as you're telling people that they're upcycling and they're using these products that are technically trash, then that's okay because consumers can choose to buy it or not. But if you lie about it, that's when the problem is. So here's an example of what happens when you lie about it. So Jonathan brings up the so-called pink slime scandal a few years ago. ABC News reported that meat manufacturers often use something known as fiercely textured beef product, which consists of assorted beef trimmings and ground beef. Finely textured beef product is perfectly safe to eat, but its pink, slimy appearance and the perception that the meat companies were hiding its presence from consumers caused an uproar. This kind of potential reaction is one reason manufacturers keep waste products out of their foods, he says. So basically, McDonald's went through this, and a lot of companies went through this, a lot of meat people. I was saying that instead of just having 100% pure ground beef to cook with or to eat in your hamburgers, they add this pink slime to. It's still edible, but it helps. It's cheaper for the people who are selling it. They still get the same amount, but they don't have to put in as much product, so it's cheaper for them. But then people were not told that. They were making it sound like it was 100% beef, and so it's this big thing about them lying. So they're saying as long as you don't lie about it, then it's not a problem. So even if it costs more money to prepare food less sustainably, there's a conception that that's what consumers want. But as companies like Ruby's and the Rebel and Regrained are showing, the perception is changing. Consumers want to support products to help the environment and that are sustainable and make the world a better place. And you can create some amazing, really nutritious, delicious food products out of stuff companies leave behind. And so I'm going to ask you some questions in the Google form, but so I don't want to tell you my opinions on this article, but the girls and I had a good conversation about this article because it brought up a lot of questions and controversy on would you want your food made from trash? So I hope you enjoyed the article. Answer the questions in Google Classroom, and you'll have a good day.